My neighbor reported everyone to the HOA for tiny violations, so I helped him report himself. I've had a professional snitch living next door for 2 years, my neighbor Harold, and I don't mean that in the normal nosy neighbor kind of way. I mean it like if I left trash cans out past 6 p.m., he'd photograph them. If my grass hit 4.1 inches, he'd measure it. If someone parked slightly wrong, he'd have them towed immediately. It started small, almost reasonable even, like when he'd mentioned my porch lights were out. Harold seemed helpful. I didn't care since I appreciated the reminder, but by year 2, it got vindictive. I bought a basketball hoop for my driveway. Harold filed a complaint about permanent sports equipment and got me fined $50, telling everyone standards prevent neighborhood decay. The Johnson kids drew chalk hopscotch. 2 hours later, Harold posted photos on Nextdoor about sidewalk vandalism. When Mrs. Chen hung bird feeders, Harold reported them as attracting vermin and got her fined $75. He created a 3-ring binder with color-coded tabs for each house. Mine was red for chronic violations. He'd post everything online with timestamps and GPS coordinates. Maintaining standards, he'd comment under each post. Then the HOA president pulled me aside after a meeting one night. You need to stop antagonizing Harold. He's just keeping property values up. This resistance you're showing is making things worse. I had never resisted anything. 2 months later, I was hosting Sunday football with my longtime friends. We'd ordered wings from 3 different places, set up multiple TVs in the living room, and I'd spent weeks organizing our fantasy draft. On one particular Sunday in October, Mike arrived late and parked slightly blocking Harold's mailbox to leave room for everyone else. But Harold didn't just ask him to move. He called a tow truck during the first quarter without knocking, had Mike's car hauled away while we were watching the game, even stood outside taking photos to document the violation for his records. He literally destroyed our gathering over 6 inches of mailbox access. But the worst part came when Mike got back from the tow yard. $300 to retrieve his car, $50 for the Uber both ways, and he'd missed the entire game we'd planned for weeks. Mike looked at the rest of us and kept saying, 6 years we've done this, 6 years and he couldn't knock once. My friends agreed they weren't coming back. We canceled our weekly tradition indefinitely. That's when I decided to give Harold exactly what he wanted. Violations to report. I found the perfect trap. Harold's immaculate property from the outside, but multiple violations underneath. An inspection from my contractor friend showed fence height variations, shed placement issues, unpermitted electrical work, and code violations that would cost thousands to fix. I started taking photos during morning jogs, calling them concerning issues I'd noticed. I created Concerned Neighbor 447 and wrote emails in Harold's own obsessive style. I documented each violation with measurements, making sure the photos obscured which house they showed. And after 3 days of building evidence, I sent them all to Harold with a final message. These violations are destroying our property values. Someone needs to report them immediately before it gets worse. I even sounded panicked. Our neighborhood standards are collapsing. I'm counting on you since you care the most. I knew Harold couldn't resist, and sure enough, he forwarded everything to the city immediately. He forwarded the emails instantly, and the HOA processed them brilliantly with automatic fines for documented violations. Harold didn't even read them properly and already added urgent commentary on each one. He even marked them priority to beat imaginary other reports I kept mentioning. And a week later when the letters arrived, he couldn't stop smiling. I watched from my window as he opened them on his porch, probably expecting confirmation of his complaints. 5 violation notices, all for his address. Fence height variance, $75. Shed placement, $100. Basketball hoop, $50. Fertilizer violation, $125. Unpermitted electrical, $100. Harold kept reading and rereading, knowing full well the disaster that had come. During the first hour, he called the HOA president panicking, but got sent to voicemail. Then reality spread across his face, and he realized he desperately needed these fines reversed, otherwise his perfect record would collapse. But reversing them meant admitting he'd filed false reports, something that he didn't want after having built his reputation on compliance. So Harold showed up at my door uninvited, looking frantic. His clipboard was missing, and he had sweat stains under his arms. He stared at me for a long moment before speaking. You knew those were my violations. You did this on purpose. I just shrugged and told him I'd never even sent any emails, and besides, he had forwarded them on his own. He couldn't prove anything. The HOA had already processed the fines, and Harold was out of credibility. 6 months later, Harold was a ghost in his own neighborhood. He'd removed his cameras, stopped his patrols, avoided everyone. He told people I'd orchestrated everything, but he sounded more paranoid than credible to anyone who'd listen.